These are 20 things you must know for Season 15. Let's go. Number 1. Catalyst passive can block doors, as most of you will know, so you can block up to 2 doorways at a time, totaling up to 4 doors. There's a few ways to break down the doors if a Catalyst has reinforced one. You can kick the door still, but it will take 4 kicks per door to break it down. Using teamwork here can speed up the process, but things like grenades and Fuse's tactical can still blow the doors off if you need to. Tip number 2. Broken Moon has zip rails, which most of you are probably familiar with. These move based on your momentum and velocity, meaning if you're going uphill, you will be moving at a slower pace on the zip rail. But if you're going down, your momentum will severely pick up and could allow for a meaningful escape away from your opponents. Do keep in mind, these work the same way as normal zip lines, so you can only interact with them 3 times before they will kick you off, and you don't have complete accuracy with your weapon when firing on zip rails. Number 3. Currently, there is a huge bug in the middle of the map at Promenade, where the geometry is creating an invincible wall for things like grenades and even some abilities like Fuse's tactical. Be aware of this if you are taking a fight in these hallways. I've noticed it particularly in the middle of Promenade at the double doors, and it honestly screwed me up the first time I found this out. Tip number 4. The Rampage will now come fully charged when you grab it off of the care package. It will still come with an additional thermite, meaning you'll technically have 2 charges for the Rampage. They also removed heat decay over time, meaning the gun won't lose its charge up unless you are actively shooting it. Now, this isn't true for the Sentinel if you go and charge that, however, but on a separate note, and this wasn't officially mentioned in the patch notes, I do feel like the spawn rate of the Rampage has been increased, as it's definitely been the most common weapon I've found in care packages so far. Tip number 5. Catalyst's tactical takes well over 150 damage to destroy and can only be destroyed from the little orb in the middle. However, you'll only be able to shoot the orb if you are close to it, as her tactical cannot be destroyed from a distance. Catalyst gets 2 of these charges before she's on any cooldown, but she can have a total of 3 out at a time. I like to think of it as a pretty similar concept to the caustic trap, meaning that it will not go away unless it's destroyed, or Catalyst overlaps it by using a 4th tactical ability. Tip number 6. Catalyst's ultimate is on a 90-second cooldown that starts as soon as you throw the ultimate. The ultimate will last for 30 seconds, but honestly, when the ultimate ends, you're already at 34% towards your next ult. If you're wondering how to depict which is a friendly and which is an enemy Catalyst ability, well, enemies will have a little bit of a red glow underneath it, and friendlies will have a little bit of a blue glow underneath it. How good is this ability overall? Well, I have to say it's sort of underwhelming, and here's why. Number 7. Seer can see through the Catalyst wall still, and I think it's not what most of us were expecting when Apex released their trailer. The strange thing is, Bloodhound Scan doesn't work through the wall, but Seer's abilities do, so I don't know if this is a bug or what is really going on. However, even if you don't have a Seer to tell you what's on the other side, there's still a pretty small risk to peeking through the wall, especially if you already have somewhat of an opening in the fight. In other words, it's not really that much of a deterrent, so don't hesitate to push through the wall if you've already dealt a good bit of damage to your enemy or even have a knock on the enemy team. I wouldn't recommend just running through the wall if you know the enemy is baiting you on the other side and you haven't dealt any damage to them. Number 8. Catalyst's finisher automatically turns the enemy around if you start and then quickly cancel the finisher. This can be a pretty easy way to thirst your opponent if completing the finisher is too risky, but the player is, say, in a corner or something like that and using their knockdown shield in an effective way. There are a few other finishers that do this, but I wanted to point out that Catalyst does as well. Number 9. The firing range now allows for you to experiment with any of the legends, even if you haven't purchased them and unlocked them yet. This is great for newer players who may not have all the legends unlocked and are unsure on which legend they want to unlock next. Now, I kind of wish this feature was added from day one, but hey, here we are, and it's nice to finally have it. Number 10. The Mastiff is now back on floor loot, and it's good, but not great. Here's why. If you have the chance to grab a Peacekeeper from the Replicator, then do so. I think the PK and maybe even the EVA 8 are both better shotguns currently. Don't get me wrong, Mastiff is still good, but they did have to take it down a notch from what it was last season, and it's certainly different from what it was before it went into the care package. The damage per shot is sort of inconsistent. Sometimes you'll hit for 66, and other times you're going to be hitting for 11. And some of you may say, well, that's very similar to the Peacekeeper, but I think the Peacekeeper just has a higher damage potential, and it's a little bit more consistent in my opinion. If you guys are enjoying this video, all I ask in return is for you to hit that subscribe button. I'm getting super close to 100,000 subscribers, and we're going to be dropping a lot of sick Apex content this season, so thank you for doing so. Tip number 11, the ring 1 pre-shrink time increased from 60 seconds up to 90 seconds. So what does that mean? Well, ultimately, you're gonna have more time if you are not in zone to loot and potentially take an early fight off draw. This is gonna make the game feel a little bit slower, but I think it's much healthier than what it was last season, where at times if you landed on the edge of the map before the ring had even closed and the zone pulled all the way to the other side, you just felt like you were always moving from behind. You were gonna take a fight and the zone was gonna overlap you, or maybe you didn't even take a fight and the zone was still overlapping you. And especially since the zone 1 does the same as zone 2, it got to be quite annoying in a lot of games. So I think this season it will feel a bit better taking early fights and taking your time to loot and explore the map a bit more. Tip number 12, although the zip rails are a great new mechanic that they added, don't be surprised when you get third-partied off of them, especially in those 3-story buildings that are often drop-off points from the rails. If you are occupied with a fight and then lucky enough to come out alive, you should begin to expect another team approaching that you may not have even heard or seen. This has happened to me many times yesterday, and yes, it was very frustrating, but I think it's just going to be one of these learning curves that we're all going to have to come to accept on this map. Tip number 13, the triple take received a couple small buffs that actually really improved its overall utility. Now, I'll be doing a weapons tier list in the upcoming days, but I want to say it's certainly top tier. I would strongly recommend using this weapon in Season 15 if you're looking to have any sort of range, but also the gun can sort of flex as a shotgun if you need it to up close. They increased the weapon's fire rate and they made it so that the choke actually tightens quicker, so that just means that the gun's going to do way more damage per shot now, and ultimately it's boosted its effectiveness. Tip number 14, the map has a total of 16 POIs, and that means that there are a lot of contested drops going on. My recommendation to you is when you are contesting a team, try to land on the edge of the POI, especially if there's more than one other team coming with you. These POIs are huge, and if you land in the center and there's multiple teams surrounding you, well, you could see how it'll be a tough time to make it out alive. With that said, it's also pretty tough to tell at times how many teams are actually coming with you since these POIs are just sprawling. Expect to take contested drops and expect that another team is always near. Tip number 15, the L-Star also received a couple changes in Season 15, and the main thing you want to take away from that is that this weapon's recoil is now a bit more manageable. I want to confirm that this makes the gun much better, and although in the past 2 seasons this weapon was sort of irrelevant, you may be seeing it creep back into the meta somewhat during this season. Number 16, Terraformer is probably the hottest drop that I've experienced so far. This could change, but in the case that it doesn't, I think you can chalk that up to it being a very big POI and centrally located. Be careful here, as many teams will gladly contest you, and it will be difficult at times to gauge how many teams are actually landing with you or even nearby. This POI is heavily controlled by its high ground, and luckily there are a few different ways to reach and achieve that high ground, but my tip to you is always try to maintain this if you are fighting here, but watch your back because a third party will be near and it's going to be tough to tell where they're at until they're already too close. Number 17, Gibby's bubble prevents Catalyst's ult from cutting through his bubble. I'm unclear if this is as intended, but if his bubble is down first and then you use Catalyst's ultimate, it will go over the bubble, and then when the bubble disappears, it will leave a large arc of uncovered area in her ultimate. Be aware of this, as the first time it happened to me, I really didn't understand what had happened and it winded up getting me killed. Tip number 18, on the new map, Broken Moon, you definitely want to carry a gun with some range, whether that's a marksman, a sniper, or even an AR with the anvil receiver. This map has a lot of wide open areas along with many potential angles because of the zip rail system and the larger POIs. Some games where I'd have an SMG and maybe a shotgun as my secondary, I would feel extremely hindered if I was just unable to close the gap to my enemy. Now, for some more experienced players, this concept isn't only a thing with just this map, but it's certainly something I think you guys are going to want to take away when you're dropping into Broken Moon. Number 19, if you're tired of solo queuing in Season 15 or you're just new to the game, feel free to join my Discord. The link is in the description. This is a great place to find teammates so that you can hopefully reach that rank that you've been going for, or just enjoy the game more by playing with some people and not suffering while solo queuing. Tip number 20, this is more something you should be aware of until they fix it, but currently for all controller players, there is a bug where if you are actively in Catalyst Tactical, you cannot reload your weapon. The gun will still obviously be able to auto reload if you shoot all the bullets and you don't holster the weapon, but let's say you shoot half the mag and then try to press whatever your reload button is, don't be surprised if it doesn't work until they fix this bug. If you guys are trying to improve your aim in Season 15, well, I covered everything you need to know in this video here. Check it out next. Thanks for watching. Peace.